Hey guys, welcome to Just Three Things. I'm Charan. Yeah, and this is me. So, thank you all for subscribing to our channel and making us reach 1K subscribers. And we are really grateful for you all. It wouldn't have happened without you, your love and support. So, yeah, in this video, I'll be interviewing Gabe. So, Gabe is pretty famous on Twitter for his node wizardry. So, let's get to know more about him and his way around with shaders and some tips and tricks along the way. So, let's get started. Hey, hi Gabe, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good too. So Gabe, tell me about yourself.
Um, I really like doing lots of stuff. I like playing games. I like making games. I like making shaders, of course,
Yeah.
obviously. Um, I still enjoy doing things like modeling and stuff in Blender. But Blender is really where the majority of my free time is, like Blender and Substance Designer, a little bit of Unity.
Yeah.
Um,
So
that's the
yeah.
majority of
So you're
me.
so young and you go to school. So how do you manage
Mhm.
Blender and school?
Um, I don't manage it well. Uh, Sometimes I do like Blender stuff before I get all my homework done, and then I regret doing that because I don't have any homework done. And then, um, but yeah, it's especially with the virus that I can't name or you're gonna get demonetized. You know, the
Yeah.
sickness that's going around.
Yeah.
No one can leave their homes. Um, Everyone's kind of stuck at home, so like basically whenever I'm not doing school, I'm pretty much always doing like CG
Blender.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I
So
sometimes play games with friends, but I do that way less often than I just make shaders and things like that.
yeah. So do you also do game development?
Yeah. So I do a lot of game development in Unity.
Mm-hmm.
My friends and I actually participated in a game jam
Oh.
a while ago. And we won first place. So that
Oh.
was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah, thanks.
Never heard of this you were mentioning before. Yeah. So
Okay.
what are your hobbies other than Blender?
Um, I like drawing. I do a lot of like traditional art, like pencil and paper. I also enjoy just hanging out with friends and playing games. But honestly, outside of like Blender and stuff, I don't have a ton of hobbies.
Yeah.
I enjoy things like camping. Um, Camping is fun. Although you can't really go outside as often
Mm-hmm.
nowadays. But yeah, really the majority of like my interests are on the computer.
Yeah, so talking about this, like you're so young right now, so you you can be learning a lot of other stuff in the future too. So what is
Yeah.
your goal? Like, I mean, where do you want to see yourself, like in the next 10 years or next 5 years?
Um, I'd love to work at like a major game studio or something. That was kind of my dream since like I was little and first heard about Blender and Unity from like my friend's dad. I was like, man, making games would be so much fun. And I do really enjoy making games. But you know, like you think about making games and you don't think about like, well, there are so many different like jobs on making a game and you kind of have to pick one.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the reason I messed around with like modeling and sculpting and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually settled on like making shaders and materials.
Yeah.
So in the future, I'd love to be like a material artist for like a big game studio. That'd
Mm.
be like a dream come true.
All the best. I'm sure you will.
Mhm.
You're pretty popular right now in the shader community.
Yeah,
How do you feel about that?
I'm kind of surprised because I haven't been doing like shader stuff for as long as a lot of people I follow and who follow me. And I never really expected to sort of be in the place where I am right now.
Yeah. And how old are you and how long have you been doing this stuff?
I'm 16 years old, and I've been doing shader stuff since November last year, so less than a year.
So basically, you started off with Nodevember.
Yeah, that was when I first started getting the shaders.
So
I
yeah.
had done a couple small,
Mm.
like projects and stuff before, but November was when I started doing it a lot.
So did you get to know about this stuff because of Simon Thomas and other people, or else like do you know like Nodevember is going to
Yeah.
happen beforehand?
Um, I'd already seen like some cool shader stuff, and so I was following some of those people. And November was sort of like an opportunity for me to try doing it myself.
So that's the first time you got to know about all these other people and
Yeah.
participate with along with them. That's cool. And by the way, you actually look like your profile picture. Did you?
Yeah.
Like I can see the same hair, the same shirt. Yeah, red.
Yeah.
Is that your favorite color?
I don't know. I just wore it today because I figured I should match my profile picture.
Yeah, you actually like resemble. They both are like one-on-one match. I'll just put the picture right here so that people can compare you on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what was your first project that you started off when like getting into shaders, and what was the latest one?
Um, I'll screen share.
Yeah, sure.
So my first project that I did was this lava shader for Nodevember, and this is not the greatest. Also, my color management is all messed up because I switched over to a different color management setup.
Yeah.
But this was when I first like got into shaders. Was day one of November,
Okay.
and at this point, I'm not really using math. I'm just kind of like blending together different like Voronoi and noise
Yeah.
textures to see what kinds of combinations I could make.
Yeah.
But I think my first like real project was where I started getting into math. Was when I did Shushe tiling.
For the labyrinth.
Uh, yeah.
Okay.
So I did Shushe tiling before Labyrinth. Kind
Mm-hmm.
of, I was kind of experimenting with it during November, and
Okay.
so I decided to use it with Labyrinth, and I'll show that real quick.
Oh.
So this is when I first started getting into like all the vector math and stuff.
Yeah.
This is where it really clicked for me that you can make so much with just basic math.
Wow. It's like a puzzle. Like people don't really
Yeah.
understand how simple that is in the first place when
Mm-hmm.
we actually start off with. But once they start experimenting, I think everyone feel comfortable with it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. At
So
this point, I was doing relatively small shaders, nothing like super complex.
so when did you actually like start? Like, did you wanted to continue even after November ended?
Yeah, I really enjoyed Nodevember, and I think I realized like I think making shaders is my favorite part of like doing Blender
Yeah.
because I'd like done a lot of like modeling and stuff before, but I kind of got bored of it sometimes. But then
Yeah.
November, I went the entire month just making shaders 24/7.
Yeah.
Um, and I was never bored, and I really enjoyed it.
So actually, like, could you like enlighten us with how your workflow is like when you start a material and
Yeah. So when I start a material, I start off first doing like the shape. So if I'm doing like a displacement material, I'll start off with a height map. If I'm doing vector displacement, I'll just try to get that base shape in before I do any color or anything. And the shapes, it's almost like a similar workflow to like painting, because painting is easy. It's about like knowing what paints to use and what areas to convey certain shapes and colors and stuff like that. You have to know what shapes and what equations you have to use to create specific things. And you learn that mostly through experimentation. After I
mm,
do all that shape stuff, I work on like the colors, specular maps, metallic maps, bump maps, all that.
so yeah. So do you use any other softwares excluding Blender?
I do use Substance Designer. I've been using that a lot less than I've been using Blender, but I really enjoy it.
Yeah, because it's exclusively for shaders, right? I mean, creating
Yeah,
materials.
or for materials. Yeah,
Yeah, not shaders. Yeah.
yeah.
So, Gabe, how is your art progression like in shaders? Like, which is your all your favorites? Do you have any favorites that you made? Could you like to share it with us?
Yeah. So the most progression I had was definitely in Nodevember. From the beginning of November to the end, that's where I think I went through the biggest change in making shaders. Um, I can share some that I've made real quick.
Sure.
I think this was my favorite shader that I made in
Oh,
November.
that's
Um,
great.
my color management is all messed up because I'm using Asus now. So
Yeah.
all the lighting on my November projects looks off. Um, but I really liked this one. This was the first one where I kind of was experimenting with vector displacement, although
Yeah.
I didn't really have a huge understanding of vector displacement.
Yeah. So it's all a cube, right? A cube or a sphere?
Yeah. And then I also liked this project from November, which was my final day.
Okay. Oh, nice. The veins look so good
This one
on.
is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Ingots, right? The concept was.
Yeah, innards.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So November was definitely where I had the greatest amount of progression.
Yeah, I can see
But
the
there
first
was
project.
also
Yeah, go on, go
yeah,
on.
but then I also advanced a lot just in between November and materials. So this
Yeah,
was my final day of November, and then if we look at my first materials day,
yeah.
um, it's in my opinion. Oh, my HDRI isn't here. But it's like a
Can
snowy rock material. In my
yeah.
opinion, this was a lot. It looked a lot better, and it uses a lot fewer nodes. So just in between those two
Oh,
challenges, I got better at various things like optimizing my
yeah.
node trees and yeah,
I'll simply like paste your render on top of the screen so that people can
yeah.
see that on a side
See
or
what it
something.
looks like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that looks really great. So materials is somewhere like you actually became famous on Twitter, I guess.
yeah. It was at the end of materials when I posted a compilation of all of my shaders that I made for the
Hmm.
month,
Yeah,
and I gained like 1,000 followers in like the last week of materials or something like that.
that's really great. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
You deserve it.
November, at the end of November, I had like 300 followers, and then at the end of materials, I had over 1,000, and I gained the majority of those in like the last week of May.
Yeah. Mm. So, do you have any other shaders to share?
Um, yeah. So, materials. Well, I think I did have more of an improvement over the course of November. I definitely did have a lot of improvement throughout materials.
Hmm.
Um, for example, this was one of my favorite
Yeah, I
shaders
know
in
this one.
materials because this was when I first started getting into making like more specific shapes,
Yeah,
which is really important. Getting better at making specific shapes because if you know how to make these specific shapes and you get good at that,
yeah,
then when you want to make a specific material, even if it doesn't have a shape that you've made before, you're going to be able to make it look exactly how you want a lot easier.
yeah. I like the way you like placed everything on top of each other. Like it's, ah, that's
Yeah.
good. So, Gabe, out of all the Blender features, what made you think like shaders is something what you want to do?
Um, when I first got into Blender, I did a lot of like the 3D modeling and animation. I messed around a lot with like simulations and particle effects and sculpting. I've like experimented with pretty much everything Blender has to offer. Uh, And when I made shaders, I really enjoyed kind of the um, sort of the applications that they had, where you could make randomness and like tons of variations to image textures by changing like a seed. I was kind of fascinated with like seeing videos of what people were making in like Substance Designer.
Yeah,
I thought it was like super cool, and that's kind of when I. It was like that was around like Nodevember last year,
yeah,
and that was kind of when like shaders started to get really big in Blender.
yeah,
And I tried it out, and I just fell in love with making shaders.
yeah. I get it too. Like before, when I started off too, it is mostly about modeling. Really want to get better at modeling. Looking at
Hmm.
Gleb's work, all the hard surface modeling, I
Yeah.
was really impressed by them. But then, when Nodevember started and when Simon Thomas was doing his node wizardry, I was like, I should try this out. But then when we actually look at the node tree, it was completely like black magic, basically. I couldn't understand
Yeah.
anything. Like, it's all math node. Never in my life I
Hmm.
started using math node before that. Mostly while I'm using
Same.
volumetrics, like to multiply things with 5 or 6
Yeah.
times. Mostly like
Yeah.
we'll be using Mixarchie nodes to blend colors, but then math node, no. It's I don't know what's the point of using math
It
node.
was. Yeah. It was like something completely new.
Yeah,
I saw math nodes for the first time, and I was like, "Wait, what is this? I've never seen people use math like this before."
exactly.
And I
And
was
it's
kind of
so
blown
cool.
away by that.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's so impressive that people are like, able to generate shapes using math. Like you can think,
Hmm.
I mean, for the first time when I actually like understood all the math behind it, it was just like, basic school math. It's nothing complex, like
Hmm.
unless you're doing something like parallax occlusion mapping. It's
Yeah.
like a different level of
Vector
math, vector
displacement.
displacement.
Yeah.
So that's actually you should know some things too. But then making normal displacement, I think it's all like bunch of
Hmm.
normal math, like school math. So
Hmm.
that's when I
But I
started
do
like,
like
yeah,
what I like about like shader math rather than like school math is in
hmm,
school math you're sort of asked like this plus this, like what does this plus this equal? But
yeah,
like with shaders, it's sort of like more of a, oh, if I
intuitive,
input this and this, then I get totally different results. Or if I try this, then I
yeah,
get this, whatever, right? It's much more like interactive, and
yeah.
it's not like
That's true. Like, I mean, I wish every
there's
school
no,
teaches math like this.
yeah, because there's no really like right or wrong
Yeah.
when you're doing shader math, um, which is probably the reason I find it so much more enjoyable than school math.
Yeah, I completely forget that you're going to school. Like, you're really young.
Yeah. Hmm.
Like, when did you actually, like, what age did you start using Blender?
I started using Blender in seventh grade.
Oh,
My this was back when my friend's dad, my friend had an HTC Vive. This was back when like the Vive was like the only VR headset, and it was like $1,000. But my friend's dad had an HTC Vive, and he was making a VR game. He was using Blender and Unity. And I liked playing games, like
yeah,
just like every kid
every
does.
kid.
And I was like, oh, making a game would be so cool. And so I tried installing Unity on the horrible family computer that we don't even have anymore.
Yeah,
And it couldn't run Unity. So I installed Blender, and thankfully it was able to run Blender. And
yeah.
so that's when I first got into Blender.
Like, basically, did you start off with Blender Gurus tutorials?
Mm, kind of. It
Yeah,
was a mixture between Blender Gear and this one channel called like Tutor for You.
yeah, tutor for you, the
It was like,
animations.
yeah, super beginner level like tutorials.
Yeah,
It's great for like absolute beginners, but once you sort of get like a little advanced, I like once I got a bit more advanced, I started watching like Andrew Price.
yeah. So, Gabe, recently I put a poll on Twitter asking how many people are participating in November, and around 50% of the people said that they are interested, but then they don't know where to start. So, what is your input for these population? Like, who really want to start with November?
Yeah, so at least when I first started, there were like no tutorials for doing shaders in Blender. I know there are a lot now, so I definitely recommend checking those out. But another thing I recommend, which is the way I started, was learn like GLSL, or at least learn how you can convert GLSL to nodes. Even then, like if you don't want to do that, you just watch GLSL tutorials
Art of
with making
coding.
shaders because the same mathematical principles apply.
Yeah.
Um,
So I started off the same way too. Like Art of Code was the very beginning
yeah.
of my, because I do not know how to program before, so it was easy for me to convert the code to Node. Though I didn't know
Hmm.
like so many math. It was like after the math node got updated. Like, do you know the smooth step function, right? Like
Yeah.
before in 2.82 release, I don't think so. There was like smooth step in it. So
Yeah.
and then it actually had, that was something which I always use. So I used to make
Hmm.
these node groups, little node groups, so I can reuse it every single time.
Yeah. I started by watching Art of Code too. And I like to this day, I still don't know GLSL good enough to like just write a shader in it.
Yeah,
But like if I see GLSL scripts, I know what it does and I can convert it to nodes.
yeah. Except for the loops, in GLSL, I think
Yeah.
everything is the same. We can use it with nodes.
Yeah.
And Art of Code actually has like a pretty good ray marching tutorials, I guess, which I want to
Hmm.
check that out. But then you're really good at node, like ray marching. So how did you even start with that?
So I actually started by watching that Art of Code tutorial. I also watched Sebastian League's video on ray marching,
Yeah.
his coding adventure video, and um, I looked at the ray marching example from Simon Thomas
Oh,
on Blender Cloud, and I kind of like deconstructed the whole thing, and then I was like modifying it and stuff, and then I tried writing mine from scratch.
yeah, that's actually pretty good. And for the first time when you open the setup, like were you able to understand everything? Because when I actually opened Simon Thomas, uh, all the free stuff which he gave away on the Gumroad,
Hmm.
it is so
Hmm.
like scary for me like to understand, like when I was in the very beginning stage of the
Hmm.
shaders. So like how did you like, were you like good enough to understand that, or else like did you?
Yeah, I understood his setup pretty quickly. I was at the ray marching because like the main part of it was just the steps, each ray march step duplicated over and over again. And looking inside the ray march step, I knew exactly what they did because I had watched the videos. I was just having trouble
Yeah,
replicating that exact like equation with nodes.
yeah, could you like show us some of your ray matching examples, like your favorite ray matching examples
Yeah,
that you did?
yeah. I'll show my most recent one, which is if I can find it. So this right here is my most recent remarching material.
Oh, like looks like a
Um,
fractal.
and it's a Raymarch to Menger sponge. So this is on a cube. It has no subdivisions. It only has the default geometry.
Yeah.
This uses no displacement, no volume. It's essentially just a render engine that's marching this Menger sponge onto the surface of the cube.
That looks great.
Even the lighting is done with the shader. So this, you can see it's just connected to the Veer node. It's an
Oh, sure.
unlit texture.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the math for the point light in the shader. So I can move this around and change the lighting.
Oh,
And I am rendering this in cycles because Eevee reaches the like node limit.
limit.
Yeah. Because the reason it reaches the node limit is because ray marching works in iterations. You have like multiple steps.
Yeah,
And then fractals like a Menja sponge also work in iterations.
yeah,
So you have say like 5 Menja sponge steps and then 10 Raymark steps. It doesn't seem like a ton, but then you're
yeah,
calculating each of your Menja sponge segments like 50 times.
yeah,
So it gets to be a lot of nodes and all of that adds up.
yeah. Oh, look at that. Oh my God, like
Yeah.
it's like
There are node
Inception.
groups inside of node groups. Yeah.
Node inception.
Wait,
Yeah,
yeah, lots of nested node groups.
yeah. So yeah, that's pretty good actually. Like, this is like, you know, for the first time when I
Mhm.
saw your stuff on Twitter, I was pretty sure that you
Mhm.
modeled them. Like, I was so confident, like, but then it's not. It's
Yeah.
everything nodes.
Hmm.
And then recently you did like so many food shaders recently, which was
Yeah, I've been doing food shaders. I don't know why. I just really enjoy making food with shaders. So I made this one for the Arendelle weekly challenge where the
challenge.
theme was food. Um, and
You
I
made
still
one
really
too.
love this one.
Look at the node setup. Oh my god. I just got a retweet from Andrew Price, right?
Yeah,
That was
this
pretty
one was
amazing.
retweeted by Andrew Price. That was really cool.
Yeah. And then like I got to see the whole stream while you're doing it. It
Hmm.
was really good.
And
And
then I made this other one almost immediately after. This one has an even bigger node tree, but it's
oh,
sushi.
sushi. Yeah. The wood.
And then, yeah, the wood, you helped me out with the
Yeah,
wood
I had
texture because I couldn't get it to look good.
it was pretty good actually. I mean, is that all rematched? Like I saw only the very
Um,
beginning part of the stream.
I do have the ram arch just for the cylinders.
Okay.
Just for this cylinder shape, that's the only thing that's ram arch. Everything
Mhm.
else, like the rice and the salmon and everything, is done with regular displacement after that.
Yeah.
So I use ray marching to sort of render a 3D scene of 3 cylinders from top down to create this height map here.
So is this like a mixture of both displacement and rematching?
Oh wait, could you repeat that?
Is this like a combination of both displacement and rematching?
Yeah. So this is the only thing I use ray marching for, just this height map right here.
Yeah.
And then I use additional displacement stuff for like the rice
Mm-hmm.
and the salmon and chopsticks and everything.
Yeah. And yeah, I like the chopsticks too.
Yeah.
So Gabe, who are the people who you look up to in the shader community?
Um, there are a few people. So I look up to Simon Thomas. His work is amazing.
Yeah.
Hans Chu.
Yeah,
I
hands
don't know if I
shoes.
butchered that name or not, but yeah, his work is really
Pretty
cool.
good. He does use
Luca
like a lot
Rude.
of he does use a lot of math. Hanshu.
Yeah, but he uses tons of math.
Tons of
It's
math.
super impressive the stuff he makes. And also Luca Rude. Uh, his shaders are amazing too.
I think he has the largest shader like node tree ever for the circuit
Yeah,
board. I link
yeah.
guys. I link everything in the description below, so you can check that out later. Check them out
Hmm.
later. And uh, I look up to you, and I look up to Simon Thomas. I look up to
Yeah,
Arendelle, even Luca Rude, Hanshu, and David Cascati. I don't know if I butchered
yeah,
that name, but yeah,
yeah.
they're pretty
I look
amazing.
up to a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's just too many people to list. So I'm
So
like
yeah,
listing the top 3 because there are a lot of super talented people out there.
yeah. So yeah,
Hmm.
it's such a big community when compared to the last Nodevember. So I think there'll
Yeah.
be a lot of good participants. And for the
Hmm.
people who actually ask, like they don't know where to start and stuff, I'll paste a good resource section in the description below so they can check them out. And I'll paste your
Also,
links. Yeah,
yeah. Also, you want to do November, but you don't know where to start? Don't worry about making bad shaders. My first
exactly.
November shaders were pretty bad too. That's
Yeah,
how you learn.
yeah.
Just experiment, and you're gonna improve.
So for example, my workflow is more like break down the shader into shapes first. just like yours,
Yeah.
and then build upon it, like create the displacement map, and then create the diffuse map, and then roughness. Mostly I don't really care about roughness unless I'm using I'm making like a complex material.
Mhm.
Mostly it'll just be noise texture with map ranged values.
Yeah.
That works fine for everything because
Hmm.
noise is random and world is
Yeah.
random.
Yeah, that works pretty well for most things.
Yeah,
There are sometimes, like I do that a lot too, but
yeah,
there are some situations where I want like a more specific roughness map.
yeah. So Gabe, could you show some? Could you make a shader really quick on the stream just for our viewers?
Yeah, here.
It's
I'm
loading. Yeah.
gonna I'm gonna try making like a Game Boy
Ooh,
just because
why not?
it's got some pretty like distinct shapes in it, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll do kind of like an oversimplified version.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna start with like a reference image here, the same way you'd kind of start 3D modeling something.
Mm-hmm.
And this is helpful for lining up like proportions and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so here I'm gonna do the equation to make a rounded rectangle, which is
Okay.
just to make this base shape right here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna use vector math absolute on object coordinates. I'm going to subtract the dimensions of my rounded rectangle.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get the length of this vector.
Yeah.
And first, before I do the length, I have to maximum this by 0.
So could you explain
And
what's happening here real quick?
what's happening here is absolute mirrors everything
Yeah.
on the x and the y.
Mm-hmm.
So it mirrors one of these quadrants across all the other ones. And then subtract shifts our coordinates over.
Yeah.
I'll hide our reference image. And then length turns these coordinates here into these 4 circles.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see how you're moving these circles around and they're mirrored.
Yeah.
And maximum is going to take all of these negative values and set them to 0,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to make the length of this vector in here
Yeah.
0. And then I would use mapping range, but since it's like a beginner tutorial, I'll just use color ramp.
Yeah.
You can use this to sort of refine the shape that you want, like this.
Yeah.
And so once you get that shape that you like, line it up. Um, one of the corners has a bit more of a curve to it, right?
Yeah.
Um, so to get this shape here,
Mm-hmm.
I think what I might do is make another rounded rectangle like this, just by duplicating my whole node group.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm going to do here is move everything out so we have these larger curves. And then of course I have to change this scale now so it lines up a bit better. And I'm gonna position this on top of our original one where it should be. And so I'll just blend these together like this so I can see them on top. And I'm going to put a subtract node here so I can move this around. So I'm going to move that just right down here.
Yeah.
And now we want to change this blending mode. So it's only this bottom corner here that uses our new rectangle.
Yeah.
And so if we look at our coordinates and we separate the x, y, and z values like this, we can use less than to first isolate the bottom half.
Yeah.
And then we can isolate the right half with greater than.
Yeah.
And then we just simply multiply these two masks together like this.
Yeah.
And of course this needs some tweaking so it actually lines up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what you'd basically do is just go in and make a whole bunch of these shapes in a similar method. You could make this gray rectangle here the same way.
Yeah.
This green shape is just a single round rectangle with very small corners. And then you can figure out like, okay, I want this value to be gray on my hat map and this one to be white so it's taller because it's a brighter color.
Yeah.
And then, you can use those same masks to mask out the colors. I'm probably not going to make this entire thing right now because
It'll just
it
take a
would
long
take
time.
probably too much time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is kind of my workflow for making basic shapes, or something similar to this. This is a more beginner-friendly version.
Yeah.
It's not as math-heavy.
So Gabe, thanks for coming. It was great having you here.
Yeah, of course. It was fun being here.
Yeah, and maybe in the future we can do some shader battles if you want.
Yeah.
Let's plan it.
Yeah, I'd really enjoy that.
So guys,
Mhm.
there'll be like a shader battle upcoming in the near future. So like, share, subscribe, and check out Gabe on his Twitter. Links are in the description
Links to
below.
all, yeah, links to all the other artists and resources will be down in the description.
Yeah, that's how it's gonna be. Okay then. Bye YouTube.